free, let these men go. Aaron Johnson hits the gavel, and as he hits the gavel, his conclusion is, hey Joseph, you're a free man, Hiram's a free man. Nothing that you did led to the riot, fire, destruction of the Nauvoo expositor. Okay, that's June 12th. Okay, June 13th. Meantime, Bettysworth goes back to Carthage. June 13th, Bettysworth now comes to town again. And when he comes to town again, he goes straight to Joseph's house. And this time when Joseph opens the door, you don't get the, how's the little woman? You know, all that kind of friendship was savored the day before. But on June 13th, Bettysworth is back. Joseph wants to know immediately, is it official business? In other words, you know, what is this? What are we looking at? And suddenly he's passed another arrest warrant. Joseph now looks at the arrest warrant. Remember, there's blanks on the arrest warrant. This time there's his name in a blank. There's Hiram Smith's name in a blank. And there's the entire city council. And then you'd say the charge against these men in the next blank filled in is rioting, destruction, fire, you know, as it relates to the Nauvoo expositor. Now, what would we say about that? You know, that's double jeopardy. You ever watch that show on TV? Double jeopardy, you know, you can't do that. That's not legal. They've already been, you know, pronounced free from all charges. But remember, this is a frontier, and they want Joseph dead. And so Joseph, as he looks over the arrest warrant, he finds that it's on the same form as the one the day before. In other words, printed on the form is tiny print, you may stand trial before any judge in Hancock County. Joseph concludes that perhaps on the 12th, because he stood judge before, because he stood before Aaron Johnson, who was on the High Council and faithful Latter-day Saint, maybe that was a problem, and so he contacted a man not of our faith, whose name was Daniel H. Wells, and said to Daniel H. Wells, would you be willing to hold court today? And Daniel H. Wells is like an old-timer in town. He had lived in the area when it was called Commerce. So Daniel H. Wells, he's now asked, will you hold court? Daniel H. Wells, for the entire city council and the mayor, he's sure, he clears everything off, and he says, come on over. Now tell me, could that really happen today? You know, they have the backlog, when will my case come forward? Okay. But back then, for the mayor, yep, okay. This case is actually most unusual. You would say, Hiram Smith testifies, due process of law. 14 hours, we talked about this. We didn't authorize anyone to start a riot. The entire city council testifies the same. For the sheriff, what was his name? Green. For Sheriff Green, he's pretty much crying his head off. He's emotionally spent. And for Sheriff Green, he's saying, charge me, don't charge those guys, let those good guys go. And finally, it's time for Joseph. The sheriff, or the judge now, Judge Wells, wants to know, will you tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, you know, so help you God. Joseph now takes a stand, and Judge Wells wants to say, he says, I want to hear your testimony about the matter. Joseph now says to Judge Wells, Judge, you will hear my testimony. He then tells about the first vision. He tells about the Book of Mormon. He tells about all these wonderful things. What's the impact? Judge Wells announces, everybody's free. Free of all charges. You are what's called acquitted of all charges. In other words, city council, you're free, Joseph's free, Hiram's free, and then he says, but I want to be baptized. You know, who then becomes your last convert that we know of for Joseph in his lifetime? Notice it's within the last 20 days of his life, and it's Judge Wells here on final hearing. By the night of the 13th, you can tell that things are different in the life of Joseph. How you can tell is he now calls young adult men to come to his home. So I would say if that were the case, all of you would be showing up, okay? And the purpose of having, kind of young men, probably 18 to 30, coming to his home is that he says to these young men that there are 26 states in the United States, and your job is to ride on horseback as fast as you can and find me members of the Quorum of the 12 and tell them they are to come to Nauvoo immediately. Tell me, could we do that easy today? Sure. Text, phone, internet, send out, I think they're here. Okay, you'd say, but back then, suddenly you get all these young men now are leaving Nauvoo, and how many members of the 12 are serving political missions? 10. Who are the only not serving political missions? John Taylor, Willard Richards. So we're going to find those two will ultimately be in the jail. You'd say, where's Brigham? He's in Boston. Orson Hyde, Orson Pratt are in the Washington, D.C. area. In other words, they're in big areas. To the credit of the young men, they went throughout the United States trying to find them, but by the time Joseph is dead, they have not been able to find any of the 12. Now, notice, Joseph has faced other problems before, but even amid the Kirtland Safety Society, he's turned to Heber C. Kimball and Orson Hyde and says, hey, go on a mission, go to England. In other words, I'm okay. Even when he's in Liberty Jail, he's saying, hey, yeah, Brigham, take the saints, somewhere between the Far West Temple side and the Kirtland Temple. When's the only time he wants the 12 home? It's June 13th. In other words, apostle means one who is sent. When's the only time where you say, no, bring him in? It's June 13th. Okay. June 14th through 17th are enough similar that we're going to do them all together. It's not like it's Groundhog Day, you all seen the old movie, where you'd say, well, you get up and you do this, and then, the next day it's repeat. But they're enough the same that we'll do them together. From the 14th to the 17th, many of the fathers now of the young men who are riding on horseback throughout the nation, the fathers now come to Joseph and say, you needed my son. What can I do to help? If the father was age 45 or younger, he was then asked, will you go on a mission to Carthage? Okay, tell me, would there be anywhere else in the world you'd rather go? Absolutely, because who's in Carthage? Okay, you got all those wolf hunters are still there. You've got the conspirators are staying in the hotel, and you've got them there, and you'd say, where's the last place you want to be called on a mission? It is to Carthage. Not every father said, I'll go. In other words, remember in Carthage, you got people that are coming out saying, do you believe Joseph's a prophet, the Book of Mormon, the Word of God? And suddenly, if you're a man, you're physically, verbally abused. And so, to be called to Carthage is not the, wow, where's my white shirt? I'm going to get a new tie. I'm off. In other words, Carthage is not the mission of choice. To the credit of 100 fathers, they now say, if you need me in Carthage, I go. Now, notice this mission was different than a knock on doors and let me tell you about Jesus Christ. This mission was to knock on doors and to tell them about Joseph Smith and to change public opinion. In other words, Joseph's a nice guy, what? And to work with that kind of thought. So that's their mission. If you were older than 45 and you were, a man, a grandpa, and you said, what can I do to help? The answer was, do you know how to write? Now, for all of us that have friends that dropped out of school and going, oh, wow, you never know if you just need the basics. And the question was, do you know how to write? And can you write letters to the governor? Can you send a letter to the President of the United States? Can you send back home to relatives, to friends, to their congressmen? Okay, and so you'd say that's what the men are doing. They're either missionaries or they're writing letters. For anybody that could trace their ancestry to Nauvoo and could say, you know, all I know about my grandfather, my great-great-great, is that he lived in Nauvoo. And I'd say, oh, then you haven't seen the letters. Because in the letters, they're describing, they're sharing their testimony. It's phenomenal. This is your big time of letters out of Nauvoo. For the women, some women could actually write their names. Not every woman in town could. And so for Emma, Joseph's wife, now president of Relief Society, she will send petitions around to the wards in Nauvoo asking the women to sign their names. And sometimes they just signed with an X, and their friend will then write their name out to the side. So X was your mark. And they would sign their name like this, and their friend would then write in their name. And then Emma, her plan was she's going to send these all on to the governor of Illinois, whose name was Thomas Ford. Well, so the 14th through the 17th, you get letters are now leaving town. All right. We are, okay, everybody, you with me? Okay, good. Okay, we're now on June 18th. June 18th, everything changes. And June 18th, suddenly, one of those letter carriers is stopped and turned around. Now, you think about it for a moment. You see the happy postman, and he's coming by and he's putting letters in the boxes or at houses. Okay, what would happen if you stopped a postman and you prevented him from delivering his mail? What's going to happen? Okay, it's a federal crime, right? And you'd say, well, is that a federal crime? I'd say, yes, that's a federal crime. The mail goes through no matter what. The postman, sun, rain, sleet, hail, wind, hurricanes, water, over its bounds, the postman goes through. So suddenly, the postmen who are carrying all these letters that will go to the next post office and the next and eventually get to their destination, postmen are now turned around and forced back to Nauvoo. At the same time, you now get people from Carthage and other communities now start forming a line of aggression. What does that mean? Okay. Well, they're flipping over their wagons, and as they flip over their wagons, you have this huge line, and suddenly they're behind it, and they've got guns. What does it mean? Okay, it means war. And their guns are now facing Nauvoo. So remember, Nauvoo is a peninsula, and you'd say, what's your only way, and here's your water. And you'd say, you get the line being formed, they flipped over wagons, and you'd say, what's your only way of escape? It's going to be over the water, but it's certainly not going to be this way. So all of a sudden, a line now of aggression or a line of war has been formed. With this, June 18th, when Joseph learns that the mail's been stopped, a line of aggression has been formed against the town of Nauvoo. Joseph Smith now declares that his town is under military law. So, okay, military, our man in the back could probably address this better than I could. But military law means that your mayor, city council, are no longer functioning. Military law means that women, there's a curfew on this town. In other words, it's dark, you lock your doors, you're inside. Board up your houses, your windows. We are in a war zone. It means children, remember when you used to go to school or that you had that piano lesson down the street? No more. Everything, families, you're boarding it up. It also means that Joseph now has called out the Nauvoo Legion. In other words, his military. And as he does so, he now addresses them on June 18th, and he's got his uniform on. He takes his sword out of the sheath, he raises it high, and as he raises it high, he announces that he will protect Nauvoo if it takes even his own life. So what you get is he now orders a line of defense to be set up. And all this town in here is now under military control. And he announces this line of defense cannot be broken but for two exceptions. One exception is if there is any word from the governor of the state, whom Joseph has been writing, saying, we need you to come, we need you to be able to protect us. If there's any word from Governor Ford, you break your line of defense and you allow whatever that person is to come inside. The other exception is if you see any member of the quorum of the 12, you break the line of defense and you let him in.